Good afternoon, everyone. What a well-attended room. I love this. We're playing with different time, different formats. It's great to see everyone today. So, as many of you know, at ABNY we bring together New York City's nonprofit, corporate, labor, and civic leaders to tackle the city's biggest challenges. We'd like to approach it with a real whole-of-society approach. And for anyone working in the childcare space, we know that progress will only come if we have all hands on deck. Childcare and how we ensure New York City remains a place for families has rightfully taken center stage this in the public discourse, especially throughout the recent mayoral campaign. As a parent of an 11-month-old myself, navigating the childcare system, I feel these issues very deeply and personally. But as the city considers the future of childcare and broader family support, after school cannot be an afterthought. It shapes how families live and work, how children learn and grow, and how we build a more equitable city. ABNY is honored to serve on the city's after-school commission, and today we'll talk about that important work. And our conversation today is about what it will take to reach universal after-school, and what we can learn from leaders across the past 3 administrations who have driven this work forward. Their experience spans policy, implementation, and long-term reform, exactly the perspectives that we need to think boldly and practically about where we go next. We're fortunate to be joined for today's panel by Almanzar, New York City's Deputy Mayor for Strategic Initiatives. Woo, woo, woo. Grace Bonilla, President and CEO of the United Way of New York City. She also, as many of us know, happens to be the former administrator of the New York City Human Resources Administration. And Dennis Walcott, President and CEO of the Queens Public Library, and he also is the esteemed former Deputy Mayor and New York City Public Schools Chancellor. A double clap for him as well. I want to please join me in welcoming all of them and thanking them for being here. And before we begin the panel, we want to ground the conversation in a discussion of the data and the current landscape. And I'm excited for this conversation. It's one that really looks honestly at what has worked, what hasn't, and what the next administration will need to do to ensure that every child has access to high-quality after-school programming. So to kick us off, it's my pleasure to introduce Sharon Greenberger, President and CEO of the YMCA of Greater New York, and Michael Nolan, Executive Director of the Commission on Universal After School.
Hi, everyone. I'm Mike Nolan. Happy to be here with all of you today. First of all, I want to do some thank yous before we do the ground setting. Thank you to Emma and ABNY for having us today. We really appreciate your partnership. I want to thank all of our commission members who are here today, as well as thanking them for all of the hard work that they have done in the past several months. We really appreciate your ideas, time, and energy. I also want to thank our leaders, Deputy Mayor Almanzar, my boss, Dennis Walcott, one of my former bosses, and Grace Bonilla, maybe a future boss. I also want to thank and publicly acknowledge 3 women who are here today who are really the OST OGs. And if you know what that is, then you know them. So particularly want to thank Sister Paulette Lamonaco, Jane Quinn, and Lucy Friedman. For those of you who have been working in the after-school space for any time in the past 30 years, you know the impact that these women have had on the field and on youth development. Finally, I want to pay particular thanks to the city government teams that have been part of this effort for the past year. That starts with our amazing team at DYCD, from Commissioner Keith Howard on down. We also want to thank our partners at New York City Public Schools. And I finally want to thank the team from the Mayor's Office and the Innovation team who have worked for the past 5 months to produce the report that you have in your seats. They have been true public servants and really gave it their all to produce this really incredible piece of work under a tight time frame. So thanks to them. And so I want to take a couple minutes, as Emma mentioned, to just do a grounding of where we are in terms of after school in New York City. I know many of you have been in this work and been in this space for many years. Others may be new to it, so we want to make sure everyone's sort of coming from the same understanding. And I think this is my favorite graphic in the report, and it really says it all. After school really is at the heart of a lot of the things that this city is trying to achieve, whether it's education and ensuring that kids have social emotional learning and increasing school attendance, whether it's childcare and providing parents with peace of mind while they're at work, or affordability. After school is that public policy that has a number of facets and produces incredible results for the city of New York. I want to take a little bit of time to talk through what those results are from young people. And don't take it from me, but you can take it from the National Academies of Science, Engineering, and Medicine, which sounds very official and is very official. They have done work in this space for years and years and just released another report this year confirming what many of us already know. And the too long, don't read is basically after school works. It ensures that kids have structured environments outside of the traditional school day, that they're able to engage in meaningful activities, build relationships, and develop essential life skills. More specifically, we know that after school ensures social emotional development for young people, providing them with opportunities to meet with peers. It also provides them with academic supports. After school does not try to mirror or mimic what happens in the school day, but it does ensure that there are opportunities to enhance and enrich the classroom learning with project-based learning and hands-on learning. After school also provides young people with caring adults, mentors, adults who are not their parents or not teachers, and the after-school system is set up so those adults who are running our programs have intentional relationships with young people for many years. Fourth, healthy behaviors. There are opportunities for physical recreation, as well as healthy eating, as well as, frankly, just strong relationships with peers. At a time when so many parents are worried about too much screen time, after school is an antidote for that. Lastly, after school provides those opportunities for identity for exploration and identity formation. It allows young people to try things out, try on different hats, figure out what their passions are, what they're good at, and develop a sense of self. So those are the benefits of after school, but we also wanted to provide some context in terms of what after school looks like in the city of New York. So as of the last school year that ended last year, the city of New York, we were providing 177,000 publicly funded K-8 slots. And this graph shows you what that looks like broken up by elementary school and middle school. And while 177,000 students served each day is a tremendous number, we all know that this is New York City. And so when put into context and when looked at the total elementary school and middle school population, you can sort of see what that looks like. In short, only 17% of elementary school students across public, private, and charter schools have access to a publicly funded seat, whereas that is double for middle school. For those of you who have been following this work, you know that under the de Blasio administration, there was a huge increase in middle school programming. And so that accounts for that increase in the footprint of the middle school programs. So starting off, this was a recognition during the Adams administration that when it came to after school, there was a huge gap, literally a 428,000 student gap when it came to elementary after school. And so for several years, we did a lot of work with a lot of the teams that I mentioned to figure out what this administration could do. At the same time that we were looking at the disparity here, we were also realizing that the system had not been reprocured in about 10 years. And in addition to looking at the quantity, we also needed to look at the quantity. The good news is that, as many of you know, this past spring, the Adams administration announced new funding on the level of $330 million. That is a 75 increase to the budget of DYCD, and that $331 million is divided into two components. $195 million is to improve current programs that basically translates to higher provider rates for our nonprofit providers, as well as $136 million for an additional 20,000 K-5 seats. So this is really the first time that the city of New York is adding any capacity at the K-5 level in over 15 years. I do want to take a beat there. As those of you who work in city government know, $331 million does not come easily. And I want to acknowledge all the folks who were involved in that. Former First Deputy Mayor Sheena Wright, former First Deputy Mayor Maria Torres-Springer, current First Deputy Mayor Randy Mastro, and definitely Deputy Mayor Anna Almanzar, who made it her mission to get $331 million. And because I am a city government bureaucrat, I am obligated to also thank our great partners from the Office of Management and Budget. Many of them who are here today. Let's give our friends at OMB a round of applause. In all seriousness, this was a true team effort to get this funding to ensure that it's going to the right things. But we also recognize that this was just a start. Getting the money, as hard as it was, is just the beginning of this effort. And so as we took a breath after the funding was announced, we realized we needed to think bigger, we needed to think longer term, and think about what it would truly look like to build a universal system. And so we knew that we needed to bring in more experts into this conversation, really broaden the tent. And so we decided to come up with the Commission on Universal After School. So making up that commission are 36 individuals, many of whom are in the room today. So we certainly have our nonprofit providers, our advocacy groups, our public sector institutions, philanthropy, business, and labor, all partnering with city government to figure out what it would look like to build a truly universal, equitable, and accessible system. And here to talk to you more about that, I would like to invite up Sharon Greenberger. And I think it's fitting that Sharon is giving the overview about the commission. She was literally the first person who, I'll go over here. She was literally the first person who I gave the idea to. I said, what do you think about this? And she said, yeah, it sounds good. Sign me up. So you are commission member number 1.
I can never say no to Mike. And if you would all join me in first saying a big, huge thank you to Mike Nolan. I think it's safe to say that his work, his stewardship, keeping us on task and on track and on time is really why we all came here together. So thank you for everything that you do and everything that you'll continue to do. And it was an honor to serve with so many of you in this room. Thank you for the very robust, very informative, very discursive conversations. I learned so much from all of you during this process. As Mike mentioned, the commission came together over the last several months to discuss the key issues and opportunities to grow our after-school system. Our work was informed by not only the leaders in this room, but also by engagements with over 140 parents, as well as feedback DYCD received in the outreach they did from over 500 providers, principals, superintendents, parents, and yes, youth. So it was a very, again, robust process, a very inclusive process designed to gain as many perspectives as possible. The commission landed on 5 key focus areas, which I'll give you a brief overview in the next few slides, and I really encourage you to take some time with the report after the panel, not during the panel, to learn more about each of these. So the 5 include universal access, our nonprofit workforce, system coordination, program quality, and high-need students. And we'll start first with universal access, which has been the Commission's North Star. We know the value that after school has for students, families, and communities. You saw a little bit about it, as well as economic appreciation that is so important. And we want to ensure that every child who needs or wants after school has access to a seat. We know that growing too universal will take time and money, and we need to be very strategic about how we scale so that those who need it most have access to programs, and so that the system remains stable and is supported as it grows. It's not an either or, it's a both and in terms of scale and support, which is why number 2, the focus on nonprofit workforce, is so important. The commission focused on the workforce of providers who are essential to delivering quality programs. We know that nonprofit providers play a key role in the system and have the expertise, the experience, and the perspective that allows them to provide that rich, safe, nurturing environment for so many of our children. There are many dedicated, talented employees in the system, and the commission recognizes at the same time that there are some micro challenges around pay and benefits in the nonprofit sector that must be addressed to maintain a sustainable workforce. And at the same time, in order to grow to universal standards to meet the demand of students and families, we will need to invest, the city will need to invest in creating a pipeline to recruit talent and provide paths for career growth and advancement to retain that talent. So again, both recognizing that there are needs that we need to address around pay and benefits and making sure that we have that pipeline development at any and all times. Third is around system coordination. There are many entities and partners involved in providing high-quality after-school programs. Interestingly, families may have to navigate one system for school and another system for after school. So one important piece and one important focus area for the Commission is on improving the coordination and connections between all of the players involved in after school to make the end user experience, whether it's the student, family, community, to make that experience as easy as possible. That's a lot. That will require policy and system improvements between schools, providers, and the city to foster and further enhance those collaborations and partnerships. And then it comes to program quality. We all know when programs meet high quality standards, our children's benefit, which is why ensuring quality as the system scales is so important. It's that both and. And the Commission wants to ensure that there is a balance between quality assurance and meeting standards while providing flexibility to try new ideas to meet the needs of individual communities. Innovation has always been the component that propels us, leads to new ideas that can further benefit our students and our families. So to do that, the Commission envisions an after-school system where standards are understood, organizations are supported to meet those standards, evaluation is consistent, innovation is built in, and as the cycle continues, each one of those elements can continue to grow. And finally, the Commission is committed to access for all and wants to help develop an expanded system that prioritizes high-need students, in particular, students in temporary housing, students in foster care, students with disabilities, and multilingual students. The recommendations for high-need students cut across all 4 of these areas, and the Commission spent a lot of time talking about how to ensure that we embed those needs into other categories so that the system grows inclusively. So some of the tenets that we thought about, talked about, and that you see embedded and you'll see in the report are that highest need students should be prioritized. The workforce needs to be trained to support these students, again, tying back to that workforce development. Systems that support high-need students need to be coordinated with the after-school system. That's that coordinated system. And quality programs need to be designed to be inclusive from the beginning. So that's the overview. Now I think we get into the substance. Thank you again to those of you who are part of the Commission for your expertise and perspective.
Thank you for that summary, Sharon. We hope everyone takes the report home, reads it over the holidays, but in case you don't have time, the short version is after school works, parents want it, and the city knows how to deliver it. We'll leave it there.
Can you hear me? And if folks can scoot in, if you have a seat in the middle row, middle of your row, so folks in the back could sit, that would be wonderful. We have some extra seats in the front here too. All right, so thank you to our esteemed panelists for joining us. I'm going to ask a couple questions and then we'll open it up at the audience, to the audience at the end. So we're going to start with you, Dennis.
Oh, going my way. Oh, all right. I'm taking pictures. All right. Busted. Okay, just taking pictures.
Everyone will get a chance to answer this question, but I think this was a helpful overview from Mike and Sharon about how New York City has invested billions over the past 2 decades in after-school programming. From each of your vantage points, I'd love to know what problem the city was solving in each of your administrations, and how did that prioritization shape the strategy? We'll start with you, Dennis.
So first, let me again compliment the commission members and to the co-chair and to the deputy mayor, but also I want to acknowledge the OGs, as Michael said, and I made sure I brought up an OG report with me as well. So the OG report is here. And so to the OGs, like Lucy as well, and to Jane, and to Sister Paulette, to the NGs, the new gangsters on the block, you know, it's really a pleasure to be here. And to Sharon, who I just admire and tremendous respect for, and to Michael for all of your hard work, a big thank you. So again, so let me take a step back in that, I'm not sure if Jeannie's here, but between Jeannie Mulgrave as well as Esther Fuchs, they were part of the coalition that really brought this all together during the Bloomberg administration, and how you develop a collaborative process, really, I think, legitimizing and raising the attention around out-of-school time, after school, and what it meant. But also what you showed here, Michael, and to Sharon, I think was the stepping stone for people to build off of, is back in the Bloomberg administration. I was deputy mayor then, but it really goes to a lot of credit of Jeannie and Esther and the team at DYCD for all the great foundational work. And the one thing that I thought is so important that we need to constantly reinforce, that these are building blocks. And it's so important that we're building off of each other. So I think with Mayor Bloomberg, with Jeannie, we realized that they were first steps in many steps in setting the foundation for the future. And that was so important. And also how you intersect Department of Education back then, now New York Public Schools, with DYCD, so there's a connection between the two and it's not in isolation. So it was a starting point. I think a tremendous amount of work was done, and having the ability of the tension being focused on professionalizing the population, what it meant, but also the focus and attention, like Chris was involved and others, in making sure we stayed youth focused as well. And so those to me were some of the important steps that we took back then, and knowing that we couldn't do it all and we didn't expect to do all, and some of the things that we had to deal with were not going to be repeated, that people felt needed to be done a different way. And then facing, and I'll do my final plug for a thank you to OMB, because I thank OMB all the time, because I say that not just in jest, because OMB is a key part of this. Sometimes we get wrapped up in the DM level, the commissioner level, or the youth and the people who are the not-for-profits. But OMB has to be sensitive to the issues and what it means as far as the investment of dollars and how the city benefits in the long run. So that was, to me, some of the things that we started to talk about, but also actualize back during the day.
Thanks, Dennis. Grace, you want to go next?
Yes, absolutely. So when I think back to the de Blasio administration and the focus on middle school, what was clear to us as an administration was that there was a deep drop-off after kids got from grade school to middle school, and that drop-off also ended up with kids not being engaged in a way that was productive, healthy, kept them in school, and made them ready for the next level. So that's why there was such a focus during those years. During those years, I was also administrator of HRA, and I could tell you that for us, it was also an affordability issue. We could see that the economic productivity of the city really went down because parents didn't have a safe place for their kids. And again, middle school is those years where the hormones are starting, you're trying to look around what's going on in the neighborhood, and you have a lot of choices. And it was our intention then to make sure the kids had the best choice possible. That was the focus with middle school.
Deputy Mayor.
This is my turn, huh? Good afternoon, and anyone who ever gives me a mic knows that I love to give a shout out. So I will start by, as Dennis did, thanking our colleagues from OMB. I know Shane and Patrick. I know Mike didn't want to say your names out loud, but I'm going to put you all on the spot. Thank you for working with us and for being so great partners in making sure that we're able to secure the $331 million. I have to say that every time. So, it's an interesting question, because when we were thinking and talking about the after-school expansion, and we knew that we needed to do two things. We needed to not only bring the system to be a par, so everyone will be doing sort of getting paid the same thing, but also include an extra number of seats, and we did both. But what we were thinking about were two things. One that we speak about often in this administration. Oh my gosh, so many friendly faces, I'm sorry. The commission, everybody, thank you for being here. The one thing was making New York City the best place to raise a family. And the other one, and equally important, was the emphasis on public safety. And we knew that unless you keep children engaged and stimulated, that second part specifically was going to be very difficult. And then we look at, okay, where can we make the most significant change within the system? And we looked at the data, and we understood that in your case was for middle schools, for us was for elementary school. And with all the work, and I know some of my colleagues from the Office of Child Care here, I see Toba in the back, the work that we were doing on one end on child care, we made major investments in child care. We added 10,000 seats this year, the year before, on child care, expanding that program, and we couldn't just do it on one end. it needed to be done both, for those who are 0 to 5, and then after they start school. So both on the making New York City the best family to raise the best place to raise a family, and then on the public safety side was what we were thinking about too. Does that answer your question?
That's great. No, thank you. And I love, Dennis, your point about building blocks. I think it's very clear when you look at, administration over administration, this is a complicated problem to solve if you have these brilliant people here who have been working on this, and many in the audience working on this for many, many decades. So Michael mentioned and touched on this, but when we talk about universal, I would love to hear your thoughts on what this means in practice, and what it should mean in practice. Is it access? Is it quality? Is it hours? Affordability? Neighborhoods, or all the above? And how do you think about those trade-offs?
I'm happy to start. Is that okay? So I think it is all the above. And I think for us is being really targeted about how we prioritize all of those elements. For me, the one that speaks to me the most is the one that focuses on kids with special needs and special populations. Because if you're focusing on that, you're kind of taking care of all of it, right? You're ensuring that you have a staff that is ready to meet their needs, and you're investing in that staff. You're investing in the infrastructure, right? The physical infrastructure that those kids are going to be in. And you're investing in neighborhoods that probably need a larger investment than any of them. So it is keeping the kids at the center and keeping community at the center and making sure that those building blocks are all working together.
So for me, go ahead. No, Deb, go ahead.
No,
Deb.
I mean, and for us, again, also, I agree with Grace, it's all of the above. We went maybe 3 weeks ago, we visited a school, and the program is run by New Year's Edge, and I saw her here, right? Yes, and I see the team here, and it was in the Bronx, and the principal of the school came up to us and said thank you in various ways, because it was the first time they had an after-school program in the neighborhood. And seeing those children in that classroom so engaged and so enthusiastic, and not only the children, but some parents were there, and the providers, and everyone who was involved, we knew that focusing on neighborhood and looking at where is the need. Let's just not bring, and we had the 5,000 seats that we first implemented this year. We didn't want it to just go into the void and go into whichever neighborhood was most popular. We have to look at exactly where, regionally, where those seats would be most effective. And visiting the school, if I might say so, I understood that at least for the 5,000 seats that we implemented this year, we did it the right way, because those children, the school was in need. The children were enthusiastic. They asked very interesting questions, which I won't repeat right here, right now. But among them, I asked him, like, what are you learning here? And to me, one child answered in the best way possible. He said, I'm learning to listen, which is something that I think I do very well, right? I just listen. Sometimes it's better to be quiet for an hour and a half and listen to others. And for that child at 8 years old to understand that was a gift that I couldn't imagine. And so, yes, geographical location was very important for us. Thanks, Emma.
So I would add to that, totally agree with everything above, but also, as mentioned earlier, safe spaces as well. The continuity of safe spaces cannot be stressed enough. The comfort zone of knowing that you have a safe space where you can learn, you can interact, you can have social integration with other people. And to me, that's so important when we talk about universal and what it means, because if you have the safe space, if you have the high quality staff, then the children flourish. We had something at the library last week, an event at the library, and I never really thought about this until the student who was speaking said he was a homeschool student. And when you think about that, he comes to the library to get the socialization with other youth because he's homeschooled and he feels safe. When he was speaking, I was looking at our team who was standing in the back. One team member was crying what he had to say. Another one, you could just see like a proud mother looking at him. But what quality adults, caring adults mean to the children who are there, the youth who are there, and them feeling safe, I think adds to everything that the Deb talked about, as well as that I don't know which title I should use for you, Coach. You have so many titles. You knew I couldn't resist at some point. You have so many titles, but that Grace talked about. And to me, that's what Universal requires, that high level of what Michael articulated and Sharon articulated, high quality staff, safe spaces, affordability, and what it means to the population, much less learning and socializing in that environment.
Can I just build on the safe space model comment? So when I worked for the Committee for Hispanic Children and Families, we worked in a school, we had one school. And the reality was that the safe space was not just for the kids, it was also for the parents. And the relationship that those after-school providers build with those parents makes that connectivity between homeschool and after-school so critical. So when we're talking about creating safe spaces for kids, it's creating safe spaces for the workforce where they can feel empowered to say, I can handle this issue, and safe spaces for parents. It was the space where parents said, I just recently became homeless, I have an immigration issue that is scaring me because I may have to leave my child behind. It was that staff that build those contingency plans with families, and when it works, the school then gets informed. So it's an ecosystem, school by school, that really built on the complexity of what a safe space means.
And to add to that, part of, I think, the discussion with the commission members and the committees was professionalizing the staff as well. So everything that's required, and all of you know this, we're preaching to the choir, but the complexity of our city, the complexity of life out there requires our folks to be able to handle that complexity. And with that goes a lot of PD, a lot of professional development, that high-level professional development. I think part of what Sister Paulette and Jane and Lucy and all the OGs who are in the room really laid the foundation for was taking after school out of the back part of the discussion and moving it to the front part of the discussion. So people understand there's a pipeline that was identified and other things. And that goes to what Grace talked about. I mean, just the challenges out there of what people face on a day-to-day basis and what we as team members in responding to those challenges required to addressing that. And I think that goes hand in hand with the commission report.
I'd love to drill down on that specific piece about providers and staff. So of course, as you expand after-school programming, you need additional workforce. I'd love to hear your thoughts on historic interventions that have gone into training workforce for the after-school providers, but also any reflections on maybe what hasn't worked and what can inform the new administration.
I'll start. I think I have, if I might say so, the best job in the planet. The most difficult job in the planet, but the best job in the planet. I work with an incredible team, both within my office as well as all the agencies that are in my portfolio. And I was fortunate enough, and I will deviate from the question just a tiny bit, and I'll get to it. How through all the work that we were doing while I've been a deputy mayor, all sort of culminated with the after-school investment. And that was the work that we're doing with Michael Cedillo at the Mayor's Office for Nonprofit Services in making sure that the sector, right, is receptive to what's coming. The demand is going to be very, very hard, both on the workforce access, but also on the challenges that we as a city, as partners to the nonprofit sector, had made it quite difficult for the sector to do business with us. And working on those sort of outlier issues, addressing one problem at a time, and yet looking at the entire system and looking at system-wide changes that must be implemented in order for us to be able to make this a success. That's one. And on the other end was the work that we're doing, and I mentioned it earlier, on the early childhood, oh, hold on, the picture. Right, you have to look in the, right? No, but in all seriousness, all the work that I embarrass my staff everywhere they are, and my fellow deputy mayor Suzanne, but the work that we did on the child care as well, and we knew that all of that will put a lot of pressure on the workforce element for the nonprofit sector. With the policy that came from the state, dictating that New York City Public Schools has to make smaller classrooms, we knew that that will also put pressure on the nonprofit, because then now the staff might find it more attractive to work for New York City Public Schools, and there will be an active recruitment for them. So one of the things that we did that will touch on after school, but more so on our early childhood education system, is that we looked at, after hearing from many providers, and that's one thing this administration has done, and I can attest to that well, is listen to those who are closest to the issue. And we listened to one provider. We were at a child care advisory group, and he came and he told us, you're making it impossible for us to provide the service that you have contracted us to do. And I asked him, after 15 minutes of a meeting with 50 other people, just come to my office, let's talk through. And he was able to just show me the problem in 3 sentences, which is essential when you have a job like a deputy mayor, when you have every 5 minutes you're dealing with a different problem. And he detailed that problem, and he told me, unless you solve this Article 47 issue, we won't be able to do that. And we went, and I sat with the Deputy Mayor Suzanne and her team at the Department of Health, and look at that particular Article 47 that everybody in my office knows by heart. And initially, city government change comes a bit difficult, to say the least, right? And
I didn't laugh at that answer.
I heard, right? And the team was a little apprehensive, understandably so. They have the lives of the youngest New Yorkers in their hand. I'll be apprehensive myself. But they went back to the office and they looked at what they can do, and they came back with the 3 suggestions that we wanted them to change and put it forward. And that was our answer on the workforce development side. We knew the demand was going to be there for that staff member to be pulled by New York City Public Schools, and we wanted to make them easier for them to hire. And the only way for us to do that on the child care side was making sure that we changed those very strict way of reading the policy that shouldn't be read that way. On the after-school program, somebody else is going to have to face that challenge. I know that everyone in this room is invested in making this a successful program, and the best way we can solve that issue, and it's going to be an issue, is by us all working together. Mm-hmm. And I know the Commission and Mike and Sharon make emphasis on this earlier about making sure that we stick to the timeline. It's a timeline, we have to stick to the timeline. And this is just a preliminary report. And I know that there are answers to many questions that we have right now that will not be answered in this report, because the second part of the Commission and the work that we're going to embark, we, as in without me, but the larger we, that's going to embark comes January 2nd in making sure that those questions are answered, because they're very difficult, they're very challenged, and this is one of the reasons and one of the arguments that I brought back to my colleague at City Hall at OMB, and by the way, everyone at City Hall I think knew the number by heart. Anna, what do you need? $331 million. And one of the things that we knew out of respect for the providers, that we couldn't go out into the world and just try to adjust the system, that more needed to be done. And we try to alleviate that and try and alleviate, I think is the right concept, by increasing, essentially the first number we asked for was, we need to make it right. We need to make a uniform where every provider, independing on where they're serving, can pay their staff the same amount of money per pupil. I am butchering that answer, but I think that's in essence what I was trying to say. In any event, it is a long-term problem. It needs the attention. And one thing I learned about in this job is that whatever you pay attention to is the problem you're going to solve. So whomever takes on this position, make sure they're paying attention to those 2 things. One, facilitating it for a nonprofit to make sure that they can do their job, because we're paying them as we must and as we should, and also paying attention to the workforce development part of this work. That was a long answer, right?
It's a long answer.
Was it a long answer? Well, no, Dennis, if you want to call Grace a title, just call her entodóloga. That's Spanish for everything I do. Yes.
I do want to try to answer your question as well, though, but before I do, I don't think we've paid enough attention to your commitment through the 3 first deputy mayors to keep this at the forefront. And I do want a round of applause for the deputy mayor for that. And I think that and you and I have had a lot of conversations, and I know many of us have written a lot of letters, and we have been delivering them. And it is an ecosystem that needs to exist, but for you, constantly internally in the building bringing it up, I don't think we would have the report. I don't think we would have the RFP. So thank you, honestly, for everything that you've done to make that happen.
She's thanking me, but I'll say a quick story. I get announced on a Friday. On Saturday, somebody texts me, let's talk. Oh, okay, sure, let's talk. I'm at my mom's house, and I call this person, and she tells me, well, now you got a job. There's something you need to fix when you go in there. Sure, I don't know, but I can try. After school, Grace Bonilla.
But it does take all of us. It takes all of us, because she could have been like, thanks, bye, and she didn't. But what I do want to caution us as we move forward, because this is just a preliminary report, is that we need to really pay attention to the relationship between the quality of the workforce, creating a pathway to real careers, and quality after school. And if we're not paying attention to that, and we just see this as, you know, something that kids can do while they're waiting for their next thing, right? Like as a, you know, going to graduate school, I'm just going to become a youth development worker. We're going to miss the ability to make this workforce a workforce that could stay in the city, where we can make it affordable, and where we can really provide the best quality care for kids. So that's the piece that I'm like, we cannot miss our eye off the prize.
And just picking up on Grace's point, I know that was part of some intense discussion with the commission members as well, because that level is so important for people to understand both the quality and how the quality then translates to excellence for our children, bottom line. And if you take a look around the room, just take a look at how many people that are here right now. And I think the intersection of all the individuals who are here, along with city government, plays an important role in moving forward. Because we go back and forth. There are people here who have been in government, and people who are in the not-for-profit world, people who are in the advocacy world and have their respective opinions around issues. But we're all here for the same reason, and the reason is for quality programs to serve our youth, bottom line. And not to keep going back to the deputy mayor, but I will do that because it also requires that inside person to be that advocate as well. At the same time, keep their job. And how you balance that is a unique skill. And that's where the outside-inside relationship plays an important role. When I look at Sharon, you know, Sharon's at the Y, but Sharon's held some serious government positions as well. And that knowledge base, like a lot of people in this room, brings a lot to the table from the outside in, and also empowering the inside out. And I can't stress enough about building block, because this is not a political document at all. This is a document that's a service-oriented document to benefit our children in New York City. And we have to be very conscious up on the stage, all of you in the audience, those individuals who are not here, that we can't lose sight of that. What Grace said and the deputy mayor said are so important as far as what this represents to the future. And it's not an immediate thing. It's a step-by-step process. It's an interim report. It's a timeline that stretches out as well. As long as we realize that, then I think the system benefits, and when the system benefits, our youth benefit.
I love that. So I would be remiss if I didn't bring up nonprofit payments, but you already raised it, so I feel like it's safe space.
I can talk about that.
So
Bring it on, bring it on.
the comptroller has put out numbers, city council has put out numbers. We all know, and many in this room know even more intimately than I do, the timing for
You're
human
missing her
services
roll up her
contracts.
sleeves now. You're missing the rolling up of the sleeves waiting for the question.
It's just untenable. I think we'd all agree that it's untenable. And a lot of work has gone into it, and particularly in this administration, to seek to address this problem. And I would love to know a little bit more about what has worked thus far and what is going to be really critical for the next administration to focus on with respect to payment.
And I am so happy you asked me that question. I mentioned earlier about the importance of listening. I've been in very difficult meetings, very rough meetings that I deserve to be in because I had the job and that was my responsibility, and I would not abdicate that. Having said that, about 10 months ago, someone decided to move on in their professional career to find a different job, and they did an amazing job, and they told me so that they were leaving my team, and I cry. Can you imagine somebody quits and your boss just cries? Not my proudest moment, but then I saw the opportunity to bring somebody in. And someone mentioned this person's name once. I was like, okay, I know the person, I like them. And then somebody else came to my office and mentioned that person about nonprofit payments. And I had a conversation with the person, and then I noticed that his energy, just like mine, super fast, everything's right now. I'm like, I like him, got him. And that is Michael Cedillo, who's sitting in the back. So please give him a round of applause. So Michael Cedillo came in, and he said, give me 2 days, and I'm going to come back, and I'm going to have a strategic plan. And he did, and he had a list of things, and I thought, this is amazing. And then he went out into the world, and he shopped around and had a conversation with many of you in the room about all the things that we wanted to accomplish. And some people told him, and he confessed this to me last week, that if you're able to accomplish half of this, we'll be happy. One of them, and it's maybe my first year as a deputy mayor, we were able to secure $741 million for the COLA, for nonprofit, the cost of living adjustments. I, being at the state, I know how long this sector had been fighting for this, and I was very happy to be a part of an administration that accomplished that. But we knew that wasn't the end. It was a great a moment, a celebration for us, understanding that we listened and that we were able to address the challenge. But then come 2024 and 2025, and a couple of things happened, and I know what the comptroller is talking about. I will appreciate, though, for all of us in government to address the responsibility that each department has in addressing certain issues, that it's just no one office, but it's the entire city that is responsible, from the comptroller to the mayor's office to the sector themselves. But anyways, we look at the numbers and understood that the problem, as it has been described to us, was very bad. And one thing we did with Michael Cedillo was think about system-wide what's one of the issues we're facing. It's a customer service problem. So we work in designing an executive order 47, and there's my former colleague, Jim Malatras, who just entered the room. Hi, Jim. Jim is the CEO of the city. The name of the place, what's the name of this? Civic Hall, sorry, Civic Hall. Right, got it, right, got Jim. So one of the things we did was to then assign one person from each contracting team at each agency to be the chief nonprofit officer, a direct contact to all the nonprofits, and that helped. And then we kept on looking and found out that there's a major issue with the ICR that had not been paid. Went in with a mission, working with the Mayor's Office of Contracting Services to pay those out. And we have bring the number from, what is it, Michael, 11.5 to about 5 billion? 11.8. Can you say that again, Mike? 11.8 at the start of the administration, now to about 1 billion. And that's the work that we did on the side of the debt. And then there was the work that we did, and I want to thank, again, my colleagues from OMB in making sure that in order for us to have that runway to do all of those things that will provide results at the end of the year, maybe later, we needed that runway. And how we did that, we were able to secure $5 billion from the budget to be able to provide 50% advances to a nonprofit, which had never been done before. And imagine having these two asks. One was $331 million, and on the other side, asking for $5 billion to relieve for the nonprofit sector. We knew that the first strategy wasn't sustainable in the long term, although the council speaker passed a bill that the mayor signed, providing 50% advances to most nonprofit on most contracts. There's a mechanical problem that we're going to have to face, and that is passport. It is and the best way I can describe passport is that we bought a house as a 3-family home, 50-gallon hot water tank, and now we built 5 more houses on top of that with a 15-gallon hot water tank. It just doesn't work. We need to invest in passport. It's a big investment, though. It's a lot of money it will take to change the system. But meanwhile, we continue meeting with the nonprofit sector. We're looking at those issues that are sort of one-off, and then studying those one-off and seeing the spectrum of the problem, then to come with a solution that's citywide, that's system-wide, in order to solve them. It is a solvable problem, though. but as I mentioned before, but you need someone who's looking at that intentionally and is doing that 24/7 every single day of the week. How was that?
Love that.
Right? See, we did. And I have somebody showing a number or something in the back. Uh-oh, a box. What does that mean? Time? Oh, got it. Okay, so I have to be quiet. Just one more thing, and I want to thank Michael Cedillo again for his work, and I see a Pragya here as well. But this is a challenge that is going to continue to grow unless we pay attention to it, because now we open the RFP. I see you, Eddie, in the back. The RFP, and that will bring new contractors, new vendors to the system, in making it even larger. We also have that challenge with City Council, where the appropriation that they provide to nonprofit services, nonprofit sector throughout the entire system is in the thousands, and most of them go to one agency, and that then delays the programmatic. We're working with the City Council. Something else that we did with Michael Cedillo was work with the City Council in trying to together, as partners, solve this problem. They hear from the nonprofit on one end, we hear from the other side, usually the same exact story, which is the indication that you're focusing on the right thing. And we sat down with the council and went through the painstakingly process to trying to find a solution for the city council appropriation bills, the money that they give to nonprofits. And we did, and we were able to. And a bunch of, 100 nonprofits with UICD will be able to now get a grant for the city council investment in anyone who's getting a grant less than $25,000. So those are specific things we have done. I wish the comptroller would either come up and speaking with us when he provided that report, or gone out to the sector and spoken to the sector about the things that we have done. The report must be done every year for accountability reasons, but it has to be done in partnership. I think it would have been more comprehensive had he had a conversation with the team, understanding all that we have done. Some of it have worked tremendously well, and some of it we always tweaking at it. How's that? Now and one thing I'm going to say, Maria's not here. Maria Lizardo, I'm almost done. Maria Lizardo wears a shirt that says Pay Maria. Maria Lizardo is from NYC, and that is a campaign that HSC, the Human Services Council, right? Just pay. I'm going to buy a t-shirt that says Anna Pay. DM Anna Pay, Michael Cedillo Pay, Mayor Adams Pay, but we're working on it, and to my very last minute, to my very last day, as the deputy mayor, I am focusing on solving the problem as much as we can, and we are about to make an announcement. No, that's not going to happen before I leave. There are a couple of things happening that are going to be sort of wrapped and put in a ball and sort of decorated, and then be able to be announced next year when I'm no longer here, but I'll continue working on that challenge. Thanks,
so
Emma.
I cannot leave. I absolutely applaud everything you're doing, but I will not be able to leave this room with the number of nonprofit providers that are here if I don't say that it has been a yeoman's job what this administration has done, but if we do not address the systems issues and the people capacity issues at each of these agencies, we are going to be facing this over and over and over again. So I think that when we think about the challenges that are facing the next administration is how much it's going to cost to fix Passport and how much it's going to cost to right-size all of the agencies that have to process these contracts. And those are real things. And when we bring it back to after school, our families don't just have an after-school challenge. They have a affordability challenge, they have a housing challenge, they have a transportation challenge, and if the sectors that serve our families are not paid on time, our families suffer. So that is what we're up against.
And just to add to what was said, I think the process starts with what the discussion is happening right now, as far as how the deputy mayor laid it out, how Grace followed up, but it's also the continuity of moving into the future as well. And it goes back to building blocks and not allowing a political process to interfere with the substance of the service process that needs to happen, the systems process that needs to happen, and how one needs to build off of that. Because if one administration, and any administration, looks at, oh, it's the old administration, we're going to start fresh, then I think it puts the sector back way beyond where it should be. And it puts the people who are receiving the services way back as well. And so our responsibility is to make sure we continue this type of discussion, whether you're inside the administration or not, so people can get a clearer understanding that this goes beyond the politics. It really does deal with service and service quality and service excellence in providing that service to the people.
Thank you. All right, we're going to open it up to the audience. If you have questions, just raise your hand and we'll have some mics floating around. Yeah, go ahead.
Hi. So you mentioned one of the other challenges that you've discussed has been around transportation. I'm curious what the discussions have been around thinking about the busing contracts and how to continue to approach that, because there's been an extension, but what does that mean about the conversations that are happening in order to make sure that when it's up again, that we are making sure that there's busing, right? Because if we're talking about the families that need it most, affordability, making sure that they're able to get their children there, are able to take advantage of those services, can't do it if then they're worried about how are their kids gonna get there. So I wonder how that's come up and yeah, what's come up around that.
Thanks.
Fortunately, the contract is a 3-year contract this time around, as I understand it. And I was in part of that negotiation, so I will speak in the general terms. And the way that we sort of broke down the expansion of after school, that contract is going to be able to cover those 3 years. There's going to be that question that you pose in, yes, in 2028, I think that's 3 years, right? Yes, in 2028, but we're going to have to wrestle with the challenge of if there's an expansion after school, how can we make sure that the contract for those busing, right, covers that expansion, specifically if the next set of seats are focused on specific areas of the city where they are needed the most, where for the most part, there's also that compound problem of transportation and sort of the isolation on a train, on a buses in those specific areas.
I would say that the problem really illuminates why it's so important for the school system and the after-school system to work together. If the people that are negotiating contracts, like transportation, do not have a keen understanding of like how many kids are going to the after-school program, what kinds of families need the services, we fall short of getting the kind of contracts that we need in those types of services.
So you're causing me to have deja vu, and not in a good way, having been the chancellor that lived through the bus strike back in the day. And the bus strike, as I still believe, was over a very sound principle. But beyond that, the bus strike lasted maybe 3 weeks, a month or so, and it was the first time I ever had police protection, and I say this in all seriousness, following me for 24/7 as a result of that strike. But it's important for people to take the principled stand moving forward. But beyond a principled stand, I think as the DM and Grace laid out, factoring in the discussion as far as the intersection between DOE and after school and what it means, especially in underutilized service areas as well. And how the only thing I may somewhat modify, with the Deputy Mayor's permission, is it doesn't start in 2028, it really starts next year, because you have to lay down that foundation as far as educating people what it actually means, and then where those areas are, so then as people negotiate the contracts, they have that clear sense, because they're just interested in either the management side or the union side and the negotiation. They don't understand necessarily the service side and the implications of decisions that are reached across the table as far as the service delivery of bus services to those areas. And I think that's an important thing that has to be said from the get-go, because without that, then you're going to have people who may have good intentions for their respective sides, who don't understand, though, the bottom line of who's receiving those services or who may not be receiving those services. And that was part of the discussion back in the day. And as a result of that, you can't have, I have to be careful how I say this, just one individual on a union side or one individual on the management side developing the policy. They have to be informed decision makers as far as what goes into that negotiation. If we're going to talk about the expansion of services, where those services are going to be delivered, and having it delivered in a way that we are proud of. And that discussion takes place at this moment, quite frankly, because even I would not have thought about it that way back in the day. And I consider myself somewhat sensitive, but still you get locked into City Hall and get locked into what you're there to protect and also to advocate for from a management perspective or a City Hall perspective. And we can't lose sight, and I listen and have a great deal of respect for the Deputy Mayor, of having that service side as part of her decision making and what it means. So when it comes to transportation, I think that plays a significant role as far as how that gets moved along the continuum as far as the discussions that take place.
Yeah. Hi, good afternoon. First, I want to thank you for this moment. It's really great to be here at the next generation and being a part of the next G's of doing this after-school work. What I wanted to kind of ask is that we're not only operating with city-funded after-school programs, we're operating with, things from the feds, from the state, multiple agencies with multiple calendars and multiple requirements. Had there been discussion with the group about how we're going to work to align that? Because we find that, when one contract ends, another begins, you didn't get that contract, you had advantage, then it turned to LEAP, then it turned to this. And so it creates a very frenetic situation for those of us who lead CBOs who are trying to kind of sustain a level of service. And then also the reimbursement rates are always very different as well. So I'd be curious to kind of hear your thoughts about that level of coordination up and down the government spectrum. Then also, we were talking about K through 8, but high school is critical. And so, what are the thoughts? I hope part 2 comes with a high school plan, which should be about workforce and the like. But, I know my colleagues, particularly this colleague, we talk about this all the time, about this coordination of funding and how we're going to really work to optimize it. So there you go.
So the exciting thing is that we're only halfway through the race, right? This commission continues for the beginning of the next year. And yes, all those things were discussed. And I think that what excites me about the opportunity to continue having these conversations is that part of the discussion is, where does the city as an entity have skin in the game when we have to advocate as providers to the state, right? And how do we make it make sense so that the administrative burden on nonprofits that have to deliver these services is not so great? Do we have a solution? Not yet. But I have to tell you, if you look at the members of this commission, they're not shy, right? And I know that together we're going to hold the city's feet to the fire and make sure that we're continuing to have these conversations.
We're going to do one more question. Chad, it's your pick.
Thank you. So the mayor-elect has made a big priority about childcare, universal childcare, which will be a godsend to so many families, some of whom choose not to work just because childcare is so expensive. But one of the fears that I have is somehow that after-school programs will fall to the wayside a little bit because it's not as sexy right now as childcare is going to be, and they're very expensive. How do we partner, make sure that they're tied together? Because that's obviously a big part of childcare is after-school programs, especially once children are in school.
A great question.
Thank you, Mark, for that question. And I mentioned this earlier briefly. When you look at the portfolio that I sort of manage, is not the right word, work with, and you look at the Office of Child Care, the Children's Cabinet, and DYCD, and then within that, Office of Food Policy, the Mayor's Fund, and DYCD. It's all in a continuum, and it's all tied to education. If you're thinking about universal childcare and you are not looking at after school as part of that system of universality, then you might need glasses, right? You can't do one or the other. It has to be done in conjunction. for a child, a family, and families as I grew up, we're not mono-aged. Like, not all children are the same age, right? You might need a child that might need to go to a family-based childcare or a center-based childcare, but you might have two children who are in school who now need to be able to stay in school and learning and engage and intellectually stimulated and socializing in all the 7 points that Mike spoke about earlier. And the only way to do that, the most effective way to do that, is to keep that child in that program throughout the entire day. Childcare is more expensive than after school, significantly more expensive. It needs to be done, and we have taken steps to address that challenge, from investing, and I guess that's the core of your heart, on a special after school, $170 million this year on special early child education seats, and to address the need of those specific students. We have made that investment. But we didn't just do that and stop. We looked at childcare and looked at after school as in one continuum. You cannot stop and think of childcare just as the child from 0 to 5, but also the expansion, right? That the child between 5 and 15 is not even legally to be able to be by themselves anywhere. So we have to continue not only the investment, but the attention that must be paid to after school as you are looking at universal child care, because one cannot exist without the other. And just one more thing.
Yes,
and
please.
Grace said that we have a very strong commission who's not shy. And my commitment stays the same wherever I am. I'm committed to serving the city, and I know that the commission is committed to making sure that the work that has started here will continue to progress. Why is my phone?
And Mark, thank you for the question. And I think that the people in this room have to make sure that it stays at the forefront. What I can tell you, and I don't know which hat I'm supposed to put on right now, is that we, yeah, please keep me honest. We have a mayor-elect who's willing to listen, right? And right now we are trying to build a government that's going to respond to the affordability crisis. And you cannot address the affordability crisis without looking at the after-school needs. And we have to roll up our sleeves and get the work done. So I think all of us in this room are ready to do that.
So I would just add to that the example that the deputy mayor gave as far as when she was appointed as deputy mayor and getting a call that next day or an hour later is the same thing that has to happen. I mean, they are so interconnected with each other, but also someone in this room, a number of people in this room will be the people to call that DM, that commissioner that has this as a part of their portfolio and reinforcing that. It may not be from a press point of view articulated out there. Our challenge is not to worry about the press point, is the inside game as far as how people understand the connectiveness of the two. And that to me is more important than the type of media attention it gets. I mean, again, when I teased Grace about which hat she's wearing, I mean, we have a critical partner here who's a part of the commission that we have to protect and respect and make sure we support. We have a DM who has laid the foundation in so many ways. And in this room, there are people who are part of this room who have the connection to the new administration coming in. And I think the main thing is also affordability. I mean, it really does go to the heart of affordability and what it means for our youth and our families and feeling comfortable as far as what's happening for their child and children. And the other thing I think that's a key part of it, and DM talked about it, Grace talked about it, and some of the others have talked about it, is the intersection between the New York public schools. I still have difficulty articulating that and remembering the name, but New York Public Schools and DYCD and the nonprofit community. And all those partners together, I think, play a very powerful role as far as Mark, making sure that this issue is front and center. And again, this document lays out a plan moving into the next several years that is something to base it off of, and it's not just about one size fits all. And those are all the key parts to me that allows this issue to be reinforced, especially on the inside game once the mayor-elect announces his appointments. And then from there, we will know who will be doing what and then how to make sure we articulate it.
Thank you so much. Thank you everyone for coming, and I want to thank all of our panelists for your thoughtfulness. We have a reception after, so please continue the conversation. You can stick around.